Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. Today we're going to talk about hot air stations. Now I wanted this to look a little bit less jumbled, but this is the only way I could get everything in view on the camera at the same time and you guys still be able to reasonably see the controls on this thing. So let's get into it. Now before we start, I want to just give a quick disclaimer on the perspective from which I'm making this video. Now, there's lots of channels out there that specialize in lab equipment and in repair who are significantly more talented than I am. So, as I say, this is not an expert review of this equipment, but it's me as someone who is learning board repair, making videos to show other people about my journey about learning board repair in the hope that they too can learn a thing or two about board repair, perhaps vicariously through me. So for me, what I'm interested in here is the comparison between these two. This is my WEP 862D+. I bought this thing about 4 years ago. And I made a video about it on my channel where I showed it off. And that was right when I was just starting to get into it, where I actually was just like, right, I want to learn to solder properly and stuff like that. So this was quite a cheap station at the time, and it's an interesting one because it's a 2-in-1 station. As you can see, it's got a hot air station on the side, and it has a soldering iron as well. And this was a really great bit of starter kit for me because it gave me hot air and soldering in a single unit with everything on the front. So we've got a control for the soldering iron there and a control for the hot air there, and you can have them on and off independently, and we've got 2 independent temperature controls for each part of it. Now, the soldering iron, I haven't used this in a very long time. I use this as what I call my scrappy soldering iron. So when I'm going to do something really dumb, like melt plastic posts and things like that, I use this one because I really don't care about this. However, this was a good starter iron. The limitation of it was just the tips for it aren't very good. It was difficult to find small tips. Yeah, it's not a great iron. But if you're doing hobby work and like just through-hole stuff, this is completely fine. So even though I'm now going to be making a video about moving up to a bigger station, I still think that this was a great starter station. But nowadays, with more knowledge on what equipment is out there, I don't think I would probably recommend people buy something like this and a different soldering iron, such as a TS100 or something like that. But I digress. The point is, even though I'm moving away from this, I still like this station. So let's explain the differences between this one and this one first, and why I'm moving up to this one. So the hot air gun on this is this guy. Now, people who know about repair equipment will recognize this handle and style as the one that's seen on all the really cheap, nasty hot air stations that you can get for a pittance. And that's exactly what it is. The heating element is here, and the blower is in the handle here. And that is both its strength for making it cheap to produce, but also its major weakness because it means that the blower is this tiny piddly crap little thing in here. And that's why this has just a cable going to it and not a hose pipe. Now this particular one, this runs at a good 700 watts or so. It's got a surprising amount of grunt behind it. And for that reason, I found it to be completely adequate for all of my learner needs. For starting out with hot air and working with SMD stuff, this thing has been great. However, when I've been trying to do more advanced stuff like reheating BGA chips and stuff like that, I've begun to find the limitations of this where it just cannot get that BGA chip to flow without a huge amount of work. And by the time you've actually got the BGA chip flowing with this, you've probably melted the chip or otherwise destroyed it. So therein lies the issue with it. So apart from that, it's been okay. Now, I've recommended other people who are starting out and don't have much money to buy a station that has a very similar handle to this one. However, I have had some people come back and say they bought it and it just didn't have any grunt. So while this one seems to consume about 700 watts, which I've measured using a power meter at the wall, I think there are other variations of it that do not deliver the same amount of power. They might have exactly the same heating element, but the base station is severely underrunning it for whatever reason. So, as I say, Great starter station, but has its limitations, and it seems to be inconsistent. It might be luck of the draw as to whether the one you get is actually any good or not. So make of that what you will. So recently I got a tip off from another viewer about this one. This is a Quick 857 DW+. Now, Quick make a lot of hot air stations, including the one that Lewis Rossmann uses, which are very affordable. They're really cheap for what you get. And the Quick station that Lewis Rossmann uses, he speaks incredibly highly of it, and if it's good enough for him, then I'd say it's pretty damn good, because he has high standards. And if someone is just getting into this as a hobbyist, or doesn't know if board repair is for them, asking them to drop £300 or £400 on equipment, I think is quite a tall order. Now, there's lots of people out there that disagree and say, nope, if you want to get into this, you've got to buy the right equipment. You've got to go and buy this. You've got to buy a Heiko, this, that, and the other. And you've got to spend £800 or $800 or so, which is a reasonably high investment for something where you don't know if it's going to be for you or not. It's like someone who wants to learn to play an instrument going out and buying a really flash guitar that costs a lot of money and then just discovering that it's not really for them and that guitar ends up in a pawn shop or whatever. You know, I'm a big believer in start out with something cheap so you can have a play, have a feel, and see if it's for you. And then once you've got that and you understand it and you see the limitations of the device, that is the sign that you are learning and you're ready to move up to higher grade equipment. That's just my opinion anyway. So, as I say, I got a tip off of this Quick 857 DW+. Now this, I bought this on AliExpress for about £80. So for 80 quid, and to have the Quick brand name on it, I was like, hell yeah, I'm interested in that. Now, what makes this one super interesting is that it's not a 2-in-1 station like this. So, you know, you're going to have your separate soldering iron, but I recommend having a separate soldering iron these days anyway. But this one, as you can see, it's got a big old hose pipe on it. So the difference with this station is you still have a heater in the handle here, but all of the air is carried through this hose pipe from the base station, and the fan or the pump, the air pump, is in the base station. This allows it to be significantly more powerful in its delivery of air, and the airflow is much smoother and more consistent as well, which theoretically should mean that this thing is significantly more powerful at delivering heat to the target. So the fun factor is that this one is actually only rated about 580 watts. And again, I tested that at the wall, it peaked at about 600 or so. So this is actually lower power on paper than this one is. But there's not a doubt in my mind that this is delivering more heat. Because at a very casual glance, if I just quickly, I'll start up this one super quick. Hot air on. I'm going to set that 400 degrees, maximum airflow, and we'll turn that on. And as you can see, there's the temperature going up. Now we'll just see how long that takes to get to 400. That was pretty quick. Now if I just put my hand there, I'm just going to see how close I can get my hand before that's burning. Oh, about there. Yeah, that's about as close as I can get. Yeah, about there. That's the point where it's burning my hand. So that's my very, very scientific test. Let's let that cool down again. Right, that thing has shut up. So now let's turn on the Quick. So turn that on. Again, I've set it to 400 degrees maximum airflow, and we'll pick this one up. Now for this one, oh, we're still heating up. So that one, it's got an up to temperature in about the same kind of time, so that's pretty good. Oof, and there, that's as close as I can get. I can't get any closer than that before my hand actually starts, before I'm in pain. That's uncomfortable at that range. So as you can see, just from a simple basic just hand in front of it test, there is way more heat coming out of this thing than there is out of the WEP. Just straight away. They're both indicating 400 degrees. This thing is way hotter. Either it is hotter or it is far more efficient at delivering the temperature. And not only is it kicking out more heat, but remember, it's doing that with less wattage. again, I measured it at the wall, and this thing was idling at like sort of between 400 to 500 watts, whereas this thing was idling at 600 to 700 easily. So this is using less power and knocking out more heat. So you can see where the higher end, higher quality station is immediately vastly more efficient at doing its job. It's using less power and putting out more heat, and it's doing so with much more air. So perhaps it's the air pump that is blowing more air out that is what is getting us that heat. Perhaps this one is stuck with all of that heat in the heating element, but without enough airflow to actually get it out of the end. Perhaps that is what is going on. In any case, the result is that just with a basic hand test, this thing is clearly superior. So you can see why I want to move up to a station like this. And with a cost of about $80 or so, this thing is actually really affordable. And, you know, you can buy a cheap station in this kind of style for like probably $30 or $40 tops. You know, you could probably find one down at $20, but it might be a crappy one that is only using like 300 watts and doesn't heat anything up at all. But I think for less, you know, any piece of equipment that costs less than $100, I would count as affordable. So at $80, this thing seems like a really great deal for not only myself to move up to a better station, but for someone who's just getting into hot air rework as well. So what I'll do now is I'm going to grab a couple of boards and I'm going to do a quick test between them to see if we can demonstrate the effectiveness of this station versus this station, so you can see for yourself the strengths and the weaknesses of the two hot air stations. What I'm hoping to see is that for basic stuff like heating up just, you know, some surface mount capacitors for removal, we'll probably find that this might do it slightly quicker, but this thing is more than capable of doing it. And that demonstrates how this thing is still perfectly adequate as a starter station. However, when we get up to the bigger stuff like some BGA chips, I'm fully expecting this one to fail miserably, which I know from experience, while this one should be able to achieve what I previously could not do with the WEP. So I'm going to change all of this around and we'll have a go. So to do these tests, I've got a couple of dead MacBook Air logic boards here. They're both the same model, and I'm going to try removing a couple of these big caps, and then I'm going to try and reflow the memory chips on the back, the RAM chips. So I'm going to start out with the WEP, and then we'll do the quick on the other board. So they both get stone cold boards. So let's try this out. So this is a bit of a weird camera angle, but I'm trying to show you an action shot of the station and me using it at the same time. So let's turn this on. So hot air, I'm going to run at 450 degrees. This one does actually go up to 480. However, I believe the quick top's out at 450. So we're going to go 450 indicated, 451, who's counting, maximum airflow. Let's go. So as usual, while it heats up, I'm just going to preheat the board a bit, but just by blowing in the general area. Up to temperature. And just preheating, preheating, preheating. Alright, and let's go. One side, there's the other side. And let's go for a small boy over here. Oh, there's one, there's the other. So I was being a little bit vicious there. I was pulling to get it off as soon as possible. You should try and get it to flow first so you don't tear pads and stuff like that, but you get the idea. Right, now let's go for the tough one. Let's go for one of the RAM chips. This is going to be difficult. So I'm going to put in, just stick that on there for a sec. I'm going to put on a whole load of flux for this to help transfer the heat. Now let's go for a middle one here. This flux is crap. It's a bad tube, but whatever. It's the same flux I normally buy, but this particular tube is terrible. And so now I'm just going around in circles on this chip, and I'm using my tweezers just to very, very gently nudge the edge of the chip. And the moment I feel any movement at all, I know it's flowing. But those nudges, they've got to be the slightest of taps. If you get it slightly wrong, you'll knock it off the ball grid array, and then you have to reball the chip. I'm not at the best angle for this, but as I say, I'm trying to go for a good camera shot, not necessarily a good repair shot. There it goes. Nudge that a bit hard, but it's flowing. Alright, stop the clock. Right, I've got the quick setup, and I've gone for a top-down camera angle for this one because I can't get a good shot of the quick station setup because the cord is slightly shorter. Which is not to say it's not long enough, it's just, as I say, my bench setup is terrible. So you guys will be able to see what I'm doing here. So like with before, we're going 450 degrees maximum airflow. So we're going for the same indicated temperature. However, the airflow, maximum airflow on the quick is probably much higher than on the WEP. However, that's, to be honest, that is to the quick's advantage. So let's go. Sounds much smoother and less janky, and just it feels like a much higher quality device. This, it's very nice. And we're up to temperature, so let's preheat. Despite having the big old hose on the back of the handle, it actually is actually feels lighter, which surprises me a lot. Alright, I think that was a little bit quicker. What about this guy up here? That's definitely quicker. That was much faster. I mean, I wasn't really scientific with the preheating I did, but like that was definitely faster on the smaller boy. The airflow feels more even and more uniform. It feels like there's less turbulence coming out of there. Right, let's go for the RAM chips. I'll put this down for a sec while I flux up. Here we go. Oh, and there it goes already. That's it. We're done. That was a fraction of the time. So, here's a story. The reason why we might want to reflow these BGA chips is on a MacBook Air, when you get 3 beeps on boot up, it means that your RAM is crap. And usually what that means is that there is a cracked solder ball under one of these chips. And on certain boards there can be many of them. Here is an example of one that I've tried to reflow before. You can see all the flux residue on that. It's got a lot of chips on it. Now the issue I have is that my WEP station takes so long to get that chip to flow that I believe by the time it's flowing, you've cooked the chip and killed it even more. Which I believe is why I still have not successfully reflowed the RAM on a MacBook Air. However, that was so much faster that I believe I now would have half a chance of successfully reflowing the RAM on a MacBook Air. And there's a lot of MacBook Airs out there in the wild, so this is still very much a modern and viable fix that I want to be able to do. That's very exciting to me. That was so much faster, it's untrue. Yeah. Same goes for the SMC, this guy over here. I've not successfully reflowed an SMC before. I've got it up to reflow temperature and had it jiggling, but again, I believe that it's taking me so long to get it there that I've cooked the chip. So, yeah, that was unbelievably fast by comparison. When on the first couple of capacitors, I was like, yeah, it's all right. But that was a different world. That was a completely different world. And that actually tallies with exactly what I said would probably happen. For doing capacitors and stuff like that, the WEP was absolutely fine. The Quick felt nicer, but the WEP was doing the job. However, as soon as we got into something more technical, like a BGA chip, there was no contest. The Quick just destroyed the WEP when it came to the BGA test. Now, this is just, as you can see, a very unscientific, just quick side-by-side comparison. And yeah, as you can see, there was no questions whatsoever there. No, absolutely no questions. So hopefully that should serve as an interesting demonstration for you guys. So that is my very super brief flying overview of the Quick 857DW Plus. I'm very excited to start doing some jobs with this, and I think this is probably going to be my go-to recommendation for a learner's hot air station. Because as I say, there's no question of a doubt here that this thing is vastly superior to the WEP style one. And at, again, less than $100, it's not a huge investment either. I like cheap tools. However, I like cheap tools that are usable even more. And as I say, I think this is a smarter purchase than buying one of those cheap Chinese style ones with the blower in the handle at this point. Now, if you're really strapped for cash, or you're not doing this at any kind of professional level, the little blower style one, it'll do the job. You know, you can use that. You can use that for doing heat shrink. You can use that for doing some capacitors on a board. However, if you want to actually get into any kind of repair, this is what you want to purchase. And like, if you were going super pro, if I was doing board repair every single day, you'd probably want to go for the higher end Quick stations that are more expensive. But for like the $80 or whatever I paid for this, I'll put more information in the link down below. I think this is a really good purchase. This seems to be a very powerful bit of kit for less than a 3-figure sum. For the reference, I was using it came with a selection of different nozzles, as they usually do, and I was using the 8mm nozzle, which is about the same size as the one that I had on my WEP. It just seems to be the nozzle size that I've always used and seems to work just fine for me. Has a good balance of large and small devices. So I will put links to where you can buy this from down in the description below. Yeah, as I say, I think this is a great bit of kit, and I'm very excited to start using it in my work. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. My other support links for my Twitter, my Patreon, and my Discord are also in the description down below, or stick around for the end card to see them there as well. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.